My parents humiliated me at their anniversary dinner by banishing me to the kids' table because I'm single. They conveniently forgot I was the sponsoring member paying for the exclusive venue. So I walked out, taking my membership privileges and the payment with me. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I stood in the foyer of the Gilded Arch, the light from the vintage crystal chandeliers fracturing against the polished marble floors I had personally selected 3 years ago. My hands were trembling, not from the chill of the air conditioning, but from a sudden, violent drop in my blood pressure that made the room spin. I reached out, steadying myself against a velvet-tufted wall, trying to breathe through the wave of nausea. I was exhausted, not just the kind of tired that comes from a long week, but a bone-deep, marrow-level depletion. I had just come off a 70-hour work week, finalizing the blueprints for a massive municipal library project that was going to make or break my firm's fiscal year. I had barely slept, running on caffeine and adrenaline, all so I could clear my schedule for tonight. Tonight was supposed to be a triumph. It was my parents' 40th anniversary. My mother, Barbara, had been talking about this night for a decade. She wanted opulence. She wanted envy. She wanted to show the extended family and her circle of bridge club frenemies that the family was thriving. And because I was a senior architect who had led the restoration of this very building, one of the most exclusive, members-only dining clubs in the city, I had made it happen. I had pulled strings that shouldn't have been pulled. I had called in favors from the board of directors. I had secured the Founders Hall, a room usually reserved for senators and visiting dignitaries, on a Saturday night. And, perhaps most foolishly, I had heavily subsidized the cost, putting the 5-figure deposit on my own card because my father, Oliver, had quietly mentioned things were a little tight with his retirement funds. I straightened my dress, a tailored silk emerald piece I had bought specifically to match the venue's aesthetic. I wanted to look perfect for them. I wanted, just for once, to be seen not just as the helpful daughter, but as the successful woman I was. I walked toward the entrance of the Founders Hall. The heavy oak doors were open, and the buzz of conversations spilled out. I could see my cousins, my aunts, and friends of the family mingling with champagne flutes in hand. "Name, please," the hostess asked. She was new, a young girl who didn't recognize me. "Sophie," I said, offering a tired smile. "I'm the host's daughter and the member." She scanned the iPad in her hand, her finger scrolling down the digital seating chart. Her brow furrowed slightly. She scrolled up, then down again. "Oh," she said, her voice dropping an octave. She looked up at me, her expression shifting from professional politeness to something that looked uncomfortably like pity. "Sophie, right, let me just show you." She stepped out from behind the podium and led me into the room. We bypassed the long, magnificent mahogany table in the center of the room. This was the head table, set with the gold-rimmed china and the towering floral centerpieces I had ordered. I saw place cards for my parents, obviously. I saw a card for my younger sister, Lydia, and her husband. I saw cards for my cousins who had been married last year. I even saw a card for my father's former business partner and his new wife. The hostess didn't stop there. She kept walking, past the head table, past the secondary tables for the extended aunts and uncles. She led me toward the back of the room, near the swinging kitchen doors where the waiters were rushing in and out with trays of hors d'oeuvres. There, wedged into a drafty corner under a fire extinguisher, was a round, folding card table covered in a plain white cloth that didn't match the rest of the linens. Sitting, there were 3 toddlers in high chairs. My cousin's 7-year-old son, who was currently smashing a bread roll with a toy truck, and a single, empty folding chair. On the plate in front of that folding chair was a name card, Sophie. I stared at it. The noise of the party seemed to fade into a dull roar, like I was underwater. "There must be a mistake," I whispered, my voice barely audible. The hostess looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your mother, Mrs. Barbara." She came in earlier to finalize the arrangements. She was very specific. She said the head table was for the adults and couples, and that since you were unaccompanied, you would be more helpful supervising the children. I looked from the screaming toddler covered in mashed potatoes to the elegant head table, where my younger sister was laughing, clinking glasses with the adults. The physical exhaustion I had felt earlier was instantly replaced by a cold, sharp shock. The betrayal cut deeper than the exhaustion ever could. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I felt like a statue, frozen in that humiliating corner while the scent of truffle oil and expensive perfume wafted from the center of the room. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, bird-like rhythm. Supervising the children. I was 34 years old. I was a partner at one of the most prestigious architectural firms on the East Coast. I had designed the lighting rig that was currently making my sister's diamond necklace sparkle so brilliantly. I was paying for the wine they were drinking. And I was being sat at the kids' table. I took a deep breath, forcing air into my lungs, and turned back to the hostess. "Thank you," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I need to speak to my mother." I navigated through the room. It felt like walking through a minefield. People waved at me, smiling. "Sophie, incredible venue," my Uncle Ted shouted, raising a glass. "You really outdid yourself." "Thanks, Uncle Ted," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking the enamel on my teeth. I reached the head table. Barbara was holding court, looking resplendent in a silver-beaded gown. She was laughing at something Lydia had said. Lydia, my younger sister by 8 years, looked radiant and smug, her hand resting possessively on her husband's arm. They were the golden couple, the standard. "Mom," I said. Barbara turned, her smile tightening just a fraction when she saw me. "Sophie, you're late. Honestly, darling, we were about to start the toasts. Did you find your seat?" "I did," I said, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. "Mom, why am I sitting next to the kitchen door with Cousin Jenna's toddlers?" The table went quiet. My father, Oliver, looked down at his soup, suddenly finding the pattern on the rim fascinating. Lydia took a sip of her wine, her eyes dancing with amusement. Barbara sighed, a dramatic, long-suffering sound. She reached out and patted my hand, a gesture that was meant to look affectionate but felt condescending. "Oh, Sophie, don't make a scene, it's just logistics. The head table seats 12, we have the couples here. It just makes sense for the conversation flow. You know how it is, we'll be talking about mortgages and marriage and, well, adult things. We didn't want you to feel left out or awkward being the only single person here." "So you put me with the children?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "I'm 34, Mom. I'm the architect who renovated this building." "And we are so proud of your little career, darling," Barbara said, dismissing my life's work with a wave of her manicured hand. "But tonight is about family, and family is about legacy. Lydia and Mark are thinking about starting their own soon, and, well, you're just in a different life stage. Besides, Jenna needs help with the twins. You're so good with them. Just think of it as doing your part for the family." "My part," I repeated. "My part was securing this venue. My part was putting down the deposit." Lydia chimed in then, her voice sickly sweet. "Oh, Sophie, don't be so transactional. It's Mom and Dad's big night. Why do you always have to make everything about you? Just sit with the kids. Honestly, you're usually more fun than the adults anyway. You have that. Free spirit." She said free spirit, like it was a synonym for failure. I looked at my father. "Dad." Oliver cleared his throat but didn't look up. "Your mother spent a lot of time on the seating chart, Sophie. Let's just have a nice dinner, shall we?" I looked around the table. The pity in my aunt's eyes, the smirk on Lydia's face, the steel in my mother's gaze, they didn't see me. They didn't see the woman who managed million-dollar contracts. They saw a spinster, a babysitter, an accessory to be placed where it was most convenient for the aesthetic of their perfect tableau. My stomach churned, but a strange clarity began to wash over me. It was cold and hard, pushing away the tears that had been threatening to fall. I looked over at the main entrance, where Marcus, the general manager of the Gilded Arch, was standing. He was checking his watch, looking sharp in his tuxedo. We had gone to college together. He respected me. He knew who I was. And more importantly, he knew the rules of the club. Barbara and Oliver were so obsessed with the image of the perfect family that they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten who held the keys to the castle. "Okay," I said softly. "I understand perfectly." Barbara beamed, mistaking my resignation for submission. "Good girl. Now run along and make sure little Timmy doesn't throw his peas." I turned away from the head table, but I didn't head toward the kids' table. I didn't head toward kitchen. I started walking toward the exit. To understand why this moment shattered me, you have to understand the years of erosion that led up to it. It wasn't just about a seat at a table. It was about the fundamental dynamic of my family, a dynamic I had been desperately trying to change for 15 years. I was the fixer, the responsible one, the one who didn't get into trouble, who got straight A's, who built a career from the ground up without asking for a dime. When I was in architecture school, I worked 3 jobs so I wouldn't burden my parents. When I graduated, I bought them a car when theirs broke down. But in Barbara's world, a woman's value wasn't measured in degrees or dividends. It was measured in diamonds. Specifically, the one on her left ring finger. Barbara was a woman of a different era, but she wielded those old-world expectations like a modern weapon. She was beautiful, maintained, and utterly ruthless about social perception. To her, an unmarried daughter over 30 was a blemish. A problem to be hidden away or explained away with hushed whispers of, "She's so focused on her career," said with the same tone one might use to say, "She has a manageable skin condition." Then there was Lydia. Lydia, who had barely scraped through college. Lydia, who had never held a job for longer than 6 months because the vibes were off. But Lydia had done the one thing that mattered. She had married Mark, a junior hedge fund analyst with a trust fund and a jawline. From the moment Lydia got engaged, she became the sun around which my parents orbited. I became the satellite, drifting further into the dark. When Barbara first proposed this anniversary party, she had cried. "I want the Gilded Arch, Sophie," she had sobbed into the phone. "It's the only place that says we've made it. The Petersons had their party at the country club, and I cannot be outdone by Sheila Peterson. Please, you know people." I knew people, I knew Marcus. "It's a 6-month wait list, Barb," I had told her, using the nickname she hated because it made her sound common. "And it requires a member sponsorship." "You're a member," she had countered. "I am, but I have to be there, and the deposit is $15,000, up front." There had been silence on the line. Then the manipulation began. "Your father has been so stressed. The market hasn't been kind. We were hoping, since you're doing so well, maybe this could be your gift to us." My gift? A $15,000 gift, plus my professional reputation to secure the date. And I did it. I did it because I wanted their approval. I wanted to sit at that head table and have my father toast to my success. I wanted my mother to brag about me to Sheila Peterson. But as I looked back at the table one last time before reaching the door, I saw the truth. Barbara was leaning in, whispering something to the woman next to her, gesturing vaguely in my direction with a dismissive roll of her eyes. She wasn't bragging. She was apologizing for me. And Oliver, my father, who I thought was just passive, was actually complicit. He enjoyed the luxury I provided, but he wouldn't defend my dignity if it meant upsetting his wife. He was weak. The antagonist of my life wasn't some villain in a movie. It was the woman who gave birth to me, who smiled with veneered teeth while stripping away my self-worth piece by piece. She looked perfectly put together, her hair sprayed into an immobile helmet of blonde, her jewelry tasteful and expensive. But underneath, the silk and the pearls was a predator who fed on control. She believed she had me trapped. She believed I was so desperate for her crumbs of affection that I would sit in a folding chair next to the kitchen, wiping mashed potatoes off a toddler, just to be allowed in the room. She was wrong. I reached the foyer where Marcus was standing. He looked up from his tablet, his smile warm and genuine, the first genuine thing I had seen all night. "Sophie," he asked, noting my pale face and the fact that I was clutching my purse. "Is everything all right? The appetizers are just coming out." I looked at him. I looked at the beautiful building I had helped save. And then I looked at the door leading to the street, to the cool night air, to freedom. "Actually, Marcus," I said, my voice trembling slightly before finding its steel, "there's been a change of plans." "A change of plans?" Marcus repeated, his brow furrowing. He glanced over my shoulder into the dining hall, where the dull roar of the party was beginning to crescendo. "Sophie, we've already started the first course service. Is there an emergency?" "No emergency," I said, adjusting the strap of my purse on my shoulder. "But I'm leaving. I won't be dining tonight." Marcus looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment the pieces clicked into place. He saw the table in the corner. He saw the high chairs. He saw the way my family was feasting at the head tea. Able while I stood here, humiliated in my own club. His professional mask slipped, replaced by a look of genuine indignation. "They put you at the overflow table," he stated flatly. "It wasn't a question." "With the toddlers," I clarified, "and the kitchen draft." Marcus exhaled slowly through his nose. He looked down at the tablet in his hands, tapping the screen to bring up the reservation details. "Sophie, you know the bylaws of the Gilded Arch better than anyone. You wrote half of them during the renovation committee meetings." "I know," I said. "Article 4, Section B. Guest privileges are extended solely at the discretion of the sponsoring member, who must be present on the premises for the duration of the event to qualify for the founder's discount," Marcus recited from memory. He looked up at me, his eyes serious. "Sophie, the founder's discount is 40% off food and beverage and a waiver of the venue rental fee. If you leave, the system automatically reverts the billing to the standard public rate. Immediate due on receipt." I did the math in my head. The bill, with the vintage wines Barbara had insisted on and the 7-course tasting menu for 30 people, was already pushing $12,000 with my discount. Without the discount, and with the added $5,000 non-member rental fee, we were looking at close to $25,000. "I know," I said again. The panic that should have been there was absent. In its place was a cold, calculating resolve. "I am withdrawing my sponsorship of this event, Marcus. Effective immediately. I am no longer the host. I am just a guest who was treated poorly and decided to leave." Marcus hesitated, his finger hovering over the Modify button on his screen. "And the payment method on file? The deposit was on your Amex. Refund the remaining deposit balance to my card, or apply it to a cancellation fee if you must," I said, my voice steady. "But remove my card as the guarantee for the final bill. The party is now under the name Oliver and Barbara. They can settle the tab at the end of the night." Marcus looked at the dining room, then back at me. He gave a sharp, decisive nod. "I'll update the system. It will flag the server's POS terminals immediately. The auto-gratuity will also increase to 25% for non-members." "Do it," I said. "And Sophie," Marcus added softly as he tapped the screen, effectively severing my financial lifeline to my ungrateful family. "For the record, you're the best architect I've ever worked with. You don't belong at the kids' table." "Thank you, Marcus," I whispered, fighting back a sudden sting of tears. I turned and walked out the heavy oak doors into the cool night air. I didn't wait for the valet. I walked 2 blocks to where I had parked my modest sedan, because unlike Lydia, I didn't believe in leasing luxury cars I couldn't afford, and got in. I sat there for a moment in the silence. The engine turned over with a low hum. I pulled my phone out of my purse. 14% battery. I plugged it into the charger, and then, with a deliberate motion, I swiped the phone into Do Not Disturb mode. But I didn't turn it off. I wanted to see them call. I wanted to see the panic set in. I drove to a small, quiet wine bar on the other side of town, a place where nobody knew my name, and ordered a glass of Pinot Noir. I opened my laptop, not to work, but to check something I hadn't looked at in years. My parents' old financial disclosures they had sent me when I helped them refinance their house 5 years ago. I needed to be sure. I needed to know exactly how hard the hammer was about to drop. As I scrolled through the PDFs, the reality became clear. My father's pension was modest. Their savings were meager, drained by years of keeping up appearances and bailing Lydia out of credit card debt. They had maybe $5,000 in liquid cash, tops. The bill hitting their table tonight would be 5 times that. I took a sip of wine. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for it to spring. My phone didn't start lighting up for 45 minutes. It started with a text from Lydia. Lydia, 8:12 p.m. Where did you go? Mom is asking for you. They're bringing out the main course soon and she wants a family photo. I ignored it. 10 minutes later. Lydia, 8:22 p.m. Sophie, seriously. Stop being dramatic, come back inside. People are asking where you are. It's embarrassing. I took another sip of wine, watching the screen light up on the bar counter. Then the calls started. First Lydia, then my father, and finally the queen herself, Barbara. I let it go to voicemail, then she called again immediately, and again. On the 4th ring I picked up. I didn't say hello, I just listened. Sophie, Barbara's voice shrieked through the speaker, so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. The background noise was chaotic, clinking silverware, laughter, the hum of a party in F. I'll swing. Where the hell are you? The waiter just came over to ask about the wine list for the dessert course and said we need to re-verify the payment method. He said you left. I did leave, Mom, I said calmly. I'm across town. Across town? Are you insane? Her voice dropped to a harsh whisper, presumably so the guests wouldn't hear her hissing at her daughter. Get back here this instant. You are ruining everything. Aunt Sheila is asking why you aren't in the photos. I told her you had a stomach issue, but you need to get back here before the cake is cut. I'm not coming back, Mom, I said. I'm having a lovely dinner at an adult table. Don't you dare take that tone with me, she snapped. You are being selfish and petty just because of a seating chart. Really? You're going to humiliate us over a chair. It's not about the chair, Mom, I said, tracing the rim of my wine glass. It's about respect. You wanted me to pay for the party, but you didn't want me at the party. You wanted my wallet, but you wanted me hidden away with the toddlers. So, I removed the problem. I removed myself. Fine, be a brat, she yelled, losing her composure. We don't need you here anyway. Lydia is here. The people who matter are here, but you need to call the manager right now. This idiot waiter is saying something about the founder's rate being voided. Fix it. Tell him you're just in the bathroom or something. I can't do that, I said. The bylaws are strict. The member must be present. Since I'm not there, the discount is gone. And since I'm not hosting anymore, I removed my card. There was a silence on the other end of the line. A heavy, terrifying silence. What do you mean you removed your card? Barbara asked, her voice trembling slightly. I mean the bill is yours, I said. All of it, the public rate, the rental fee, the wine. Enjoy the night, Mom. It's the opulent celebration you always wanted. Sophie, wait. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up. My heart was pounding, but for the first time in my life, it wasn't from fear of her disapproval. It was from the adrenaline of finally standing up. But the antagonist never goes down with just one hit. Barbara wasn't done, she was just regrouping. A few minutes later, my phone pinged with a notification from my bank app. Authorization attempt, the Gilded Arch. Amount, $24,850. Status, declined card frozen by user. I smiled. I had frozen the card via the app the moment I walked out the door. Then, a text from Marcus. Marcus, 8:45 p.m., their card declined. Both of them, and the sister, S2. It's getting ugly, Sophie. Your dad is yelling at the server. Do you want me to intervene? I stared at the message. This was the moment. The moment where the old Sophie would have caved. The old Sophie would have felt guilty, driven back, apologized, and swiped her card to save them from embarrassment. I typed back, "Do your job, Marcus. Treat them like any other customer who can't pay their bill." The next hour was a slow-motion car crash that I experienced through a stream of increasingly desperate text messages and voicemails. I sat in the wine bar, ordering a charcuterie board, while my family's facade crumbled in real time. My father called next. Oliver rarely called me. He usually let Barbara handle the discipline. "Sophie," his voice was breathless, panicked. "You have to come back. Now, they're threatening to call the police. The manager, your friend, that Marcus fellow, he says it's theft of services if we can't settle the bill before leaving." "I know, Dad," I said, spearing a piece of prosciutto. "It's standard policy. It's a very exclusive club." "Sophie, please," he pleaded. "We don't have $25,000, you know that, the market, the house repairs." "I know you don't," I said. "But you had $15,000 of my money covering you, and you threw it away because you couldn't stand the sight of me sitting with your real family." "It wasn't like that," he protested, but the lie was weak. "Your mother she thought." "She thought I was a doormat," I interrupted. "And you let her think that. You sat there, Dad. You looked at your soup while she told me to go sit with the babies. You didn't say a word. You didn't defend me. You were happy to drink the wine I paid for, but you couldn't be bothered to ensure I had a seat at the table." "I'm sorry," he cried. "I'm sorry, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I'm sorry. Now please just give them your card number over the phone. We are being humiliated. Uncle Ted is staring. The Petersons are whispering. Lydia is crying in the bathroom." "Lydia has a husband," I said cold. "Mark works in finance, doesn't he? Surely he has a card." Mark says his funds are tied up in escrow right now," Dad stammered. I laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. "Mark is broke, Dad. He's been broke for months. Everyone knows it except you and Mom because you're too busy worshipping his last name." "Sophie, please." "No," I said. "I'm not paying for it. I'm not fixing this. You wanted to be the big shots. You wanted to impress the Petersons. Well, now you have the bill to prove how impressive you are." I hung up again. This was the investigation phase coming to fruition. I knew about Mark's financial troubles because, as an architect, I worked with developers. I knew the firm Mark worked for had laid off their junior analysts 6 months ago. I knew Lydia's perfect life was a house of cards built on debt and my parents' subsidies. I had tried to warn them gently a year ago. I had mentioned that Mark seemed to be spending recklessly. Barbara had told me I was jealous. Now, that jealousy was costing them $25,000. My phone buzzed again. It was a picture message from Marcus. It was a photo taken from the security camera feed in the office. It showed the lobby of the Gilded Arch. My father was sitting on a bench, head in his hands. Barbara was screaming at a police officer who had evidently just arrived. Lydia was standing off to the side, her mascara running down her face, while Mark looked furiously at his phone, ignoring her. "Marcus, 9:15 p.m. Police are here. We have to file a report for the insurance if the bill isn't paid. Your mom is trying to tell the cops that you stole the money. I'm about to show them the signed contract where you are the sole sponsor and have the right to revoke privileges." I felt a chill run down my spine. She was accusing me of theft. She was willing to give me a criminal record rather than admit she couldn't pay. That was the final straw. That was the moment any lingering guilt evaporated. I texted Marcus back. Show them everything. Show them the emails where she demanded the specific wines. Show them the seating chart she approved where she put the member at the kids' table. And Marcus, yeah. If they ask for a character reference to determine if she's capable of fraud, tell the officers to call me. I stood up, paid my tab, tipping 40%, and walked out to my car. I wasn't going home. I was going to the Gilded Arch. Not to pay, not to save them. I was going there to end it. Driving back to the Gilded Arch felt like driving into a storm I had summoned myself. The city lights blurred past my windows, streaks of neon and white, but my focus was razor-sharp. I wasn't shaking anymore. The fear that had defined my relationship with my mother for 3 decades, the fear of her disapproval, her sharp tongue, her ability to make me feel small, had evaporated. In its place was a cold, hard certainty. When I pulled up to the venue, the scene was worse and more public than I had imagined. 2 police cruisers were parked at the curb, their blue and red lights flashing rhythmically, casting an eerie, strobe-like glow over the elegant limestone facade of the building. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk, passers-by drawn by the drama, but more damning were the people standing in the foyer, visible through the large glass doors. It was the guests. My aunts, uncles, the Petersons, the cousins. They hadn't left. They were standing in a huddled, murmuring mass near the coat check, watching the spectacle unfolding in the center of the lobby. I took a breath, smoothed my skirt, and walked in. The heavy doors swung open, and the sound hit me instantly. Barbara was screaming. She abandoned us, she committed fraud, she put this on her card, and then she stole the money back. Barbara was gesturing wildly at a weary-looking police officer, her face flushed a blotchy, unattractive red. Her perfect hair was coming undone, a frantic wisp escaping the helmet of hairspray. My father, Oliver, was sitting on a velvet bench, his head in his hands, looking smaller and older than I had ever seen him. Lydia was sobbing loudly, mascara streaming down her face, while Mark, her husband, stood with his arms crossed, looking at the floor, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Marcus stood behind the reception desk, his arms crossed, his face stone cold. When he saw me enter, he straightened up. "There she is," Barbara shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at me like a weapon. "There's the thief. Officer, arrest her. She ruined everything." The entire room turned to look at me. The police officer, a tall man with a stern expression, turned and placed a hand on his belt. "Ma'am, are you Sophie?" "I am," I said, my voice calm, projecting clearly across the marble lobby. I didn't look at my mother. I walked straight to the officer. "And I haven't stolen anything. In fact, I'm the victim of attempted fraud." "Fraud," Barbara gasped. "You little liar, you promised to pay." "Officer," I said, ignoring her and pulling a folded document from my purse, a copy of the club bylaws I kept in my glove box, along with the digital receipt on my phone. "I am a member of this club. The event tonight was booked under my sponsor. Our ship, according to the contract signed by my mother." I pointed to Marcus, who held up the digital pad with Barbara's signature. "The founder's rate and the sponsorship are contingent on the members' presence and goodwill. When the hosts, my parents, violated the terms of our verbal agreement regarding the event's conduct by segregating the sponsoring member to a service table, I exercised my right to withdraw my sponsorship." I turned to look at Barbara then. "I didn't steal the money, Mom. I just stopped giving you a gift you didn't appreciate." You put me at the kids' table," I said, my voice rising just enough to be heard by the Petersons, who were watching with wide eyes. "You took a $15,000 gift and you told the donor to sit by the kitchen door. That's not a crime, Mom. That's just bad manners. And in this club, bad manners have a price tag." "It's a domestic dispute," the officer said, looking at Marcus. "If the contract supports her right to withdraw, then she hasn't committed a crime. The debt belongs to the party who consumed the services." He turned to Oliver and Barbara. "Mr. and Mrs., you owe the venue $24,850. You need to settle this now, or the venue has the right to press charges for theft of services." "We don't have it," Barbara wailed, the fight suddenly draining out of her as the reality of the handcuffs loomed. "We don't have that kind of money liquid. Sophie, please, tell them, pay them." She lunged toward me, grabbing my arm. I stepped back, shaking her off. "Ask Lydia," I said coldly. "Ask Mark, the golden couple." "Mark's money is tied up," Barbara cried. I looked at Mark. He was sweating now. I decided to drop the second bomb. The investigation I had done in the car wasn't just about my parents. Mark doesn't have any money tied up, Mom, I said, loudly enough for Lydia to hear. Mark was fired from Deloitte 6 months ago for gross negligence. He's been living off credit cards and the loans you and Dad have been giving him. Isn't that right, Mark? Lydia stopped crying. She turned slowly to look at her husband. Mark, you said you were on sabbatical. Mark's face went pale gray. Sophie is lying, she's just jealous. Am I? I pulled up the LinkedIn page on my phone where his status was clearly open to work, and the public court records showing a lien on his Audi. I held the screen up for Lydia. He's broke, Lydia, and Mom and Dad are broke because they've been funding his lifestyle to keep up appearances for people like. I gestured to the crowd of guests. Them. The silence in the lobby was absolute. You could hear the hum of the HVAC system. Sheila Peterson, the woman my mother had been so desperate to impress, stepped forward. She looked from Barbara's frantic, tear-streaked face to my father's defeated posture, and then to me. Barbara, Sheila said, her voice dripping with ice. This is appalling. You invited us to a dinner you couldn't pay for. You treated your daughter, the one actually paying, like a servant. Sheila, wait, Barbara pleaded. Come along, Ted, Sheila said, wrapping her fur stole tighter around her shoulders. We're leaving. I don't think we'll be seeing you at bridge on Tuesday. It was a domino effect. One by one, the guests turned and walked out. They didn't say thank you. They didn't say goodbye. They just left, casting judgmental glances at the ruins of the perfect family standing in the center of the lobby. Barbara watched them go, her social standing evaporating in seconds. She turned to me, her eyes filled with pure venom. I will never forgive you for this. Good, I said, meeting her gaze evenly. Because I don't want your forgiveness. I wanted a seat at the table. Now I have the whole room. The aftermath was clinical and devastating. With the guests gone and the social leverage destroyed, the police officer gave my parents a choice: pay up or go to the station for processing. There was no magical bailout. I didn't swipe my card at the last second. I stood there and watched as my father, with shaking hands, had to call his broker on the emergency line and liquidate a significant portion of his 401k to cover the bill via a wire transfer. It came with massive penalties and taxes. It essentially wiped out their travel fund for the next 5 years. They signed the paperwork at the front desk, humiliated, while the staff watched. I walked out before they finished. I didn't offer them a ride. In the weeks that followed, the silence was deafening. I blocked Barbara's number. I blocked Lydia's number after she sent me a string of texts blaming me for her marriage imploding. Apparently, once the money tap turned off and the truth came out, Mark didn't stick around long, and Lydia was forced to move back into my parents' basement. I focused on my work. I poured myself into the library project, finding solace in the clean lines of blueprints and the reliability of steel and glass. I was promoted to senior partner 3 months later, a milestone I celebrated with friends who actually respected me, and a private dinner at the Gilded Arch, where Marcus gave us the best table in the house, right in the center of the room. But the story didn't end with total estrangement. 6 months later, on a rainy Tuesday evening, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was my father. He looked older. The stress of the financial hit and dealing with Barbara's constant rage had etched deep lines into his face. He wasn't wearing his usual suit. He was in a simple raincoat, looking wet and miserable. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the intercom. I could leave him there. I had every right to. But I remembered him sitting on that bench, head in his hands, broken by the monster he had helped create. I opened the door. Sophie, he said, standing on the mat, dripping wet. He didn't ask to come in, he just stood there. I wanted to return this. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. It was a pair of diamond earrings I had given him and Mom for Christmas 2 years ago. Mom wanted to sell them, he said quietly. To pay for things. I told her no, I took them. Dad, I sighed, leaning against the doorframe. I don't need them. I know, he said, looking up at me, his eyes wet with something other than rain. But I couldn't let her take anything else from you. Sophie, I am so sorry. It wasn't a groveling apology. It was a quiet, broken admission of failure. I sat there, he continued, his voice cracking. I sat at that table and I ate the soup and I let her put you in the corner. I was a coward. I've been a coward for 40 years. I thought keeping the peace was the same thing as being a good husband, but I lost my daughter. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw a man who was trapped, just as I had been, but who lacked the strength to break the lock. Why are you here, Dad? I asked softly. To tell you that I'm proud of you, he said. And to tell you that, I'm taking a stand. I told Barbara that if she ever speaks about you with that venom again, I'm leaving. I moved into the guest room. I'm controlling the finances now. It's not much and it's too late, but I'm trying. It wasn't a perfect fix. He was still with her. He was still part of that toxic ecosystem. But he had driven across town in the rain to protect a gift I had given them. I stepped back and opened the door wider. Do you want some coffee, Dad? He blinked, surprised, and then gave a weak, grateful smile. I'd like that very much. He came inside, and we sat in my living room for an hour. We didn't talk about Barbara. We didn't talk about the money. We talked about my library project. We talked about his garden. For the first time in my life, we talked like two adults, sitting at the same table, with no hierarchy, no pretense, and no price of admission. Justice had been served. The toxic veneer of my family had been stripped away, exposing the rot underneath, but also allowing for something real to finally grow in its place. I hadn't just walked away from the kids' table. I had built my own house, and for the first time, I decided who was allowed to enter.